All right, a good Tuesday evening to everybody. Welcome back to On Texas Football. Welcome to the Tuesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. It is your normal Tuesday crew. I am Jeff Howe. Joining me, as always, on Tuesdays, as Rod Babers has dubbed him, the young prodigy here at On Texas Football. From his domicile, he is CJ Vogel. CJ, are you ready for SEC Media Days next week?
I am. I saw that the list came out today of who's talking. I'm excited to go listen, Jeff. I think SEC Media Days is one of those check marks on the calendar that finally get you closer to the season actually beginning. And it's just good to be around the rest of the SEC media that really gets you going.
I got the media scheduled today for the THSCA convention in Houston this weekend. I'll be there. I'll be in Tampa. So I'm looking forward to it. Hope everybody's looking forward to the start of the 2026 football season as we inch closer to it. I want to thank our lead sponsor tonight on the Tuesday night live stream. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. We'll shout out some more of our sponsors throughout the evening. If you got any questions, you got any comments, airing of grievances, whatever you got, line it up in the chat. Chat's already lively, so thanks everybody for that. Super chats, as always, jump to the front of the line here on Texas Football. CJ, I want to start tonight with a quick rundown of some over-under win totals for SEC clubs this season. This is courtesy of BetMGM. We're seeing over-under win totals for everybody in the SEC. Texas at 9.5, CJ. That's always one of those ones where, last year I was really hesitant to take the over or under. I was kind of on the fence. I don't know why, CJ. I want to get your read on this. It kind of scares me how confident I am in taking the over on this team because I think 10-2 is the record. I feel really confident that this is a 10-win team in the regular season. What's your read on this right now? What's your gut feeling?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. It's you see Georgia with a 9.5 win total over -190, and you sit there and you say, man, that's a lot of confidence on the Vegas side that Georgia will eclipse double-digit wins in the regular season, whereas it's not the same for Texas. And, they're kind of anticipating really a coin flip of another 9-3 season for the Longhorns. And I don't know if I agree with that. I think we've both been pretty vocal about the Longhorns having a good season in 2026. So where does that tell you Texas stumbles along the way? Is it Ohio State, where they're probably a point or two favorite at home, if not a coin flip? What about later on in the year against LSU? Do they trip up against Oklahoma or A&M? Interesting. I would have liked to have seen this line a little bit closer, -140, -150. But I think beyond anything, Jeff, this just tells you that the Texas schedule significantly tougher than what Georgia's schedule is.
You and I have talked a lot about it, and we got into it recently on one of our videos that we shot over the weekend, you and myself and Jerry Hamilton, and talking about the Ohio State game. And I've said the Ohio State game is a must-win, CJ. I know you've said it's a must-win game. That, to me, and it sounds, kind of ridiculous to say it, but I haven't put as much stock into a non-conference game under Sark as I am this one. I feel like if Texas wins that game at home against Ohio State, I think 10-2 might be the floor at that point. I think that much of Ohio State, and I think a win could be that much of a shot in the arm for Texas. But, CJ, if they lose that game, I think if Texas loses to Ohio State, I feel like 8-4 would be much more likely than 10-2.
Yeah, if Texas loses to Ohio State, there's no way that I see them running the table and winning 11 or what I guess that would be 10 straight, right? I don't see 11-1 should you lose to Ohio State. I would have an issue seeing, even a 10-2 season, right? I think Texas last year weathered the storm well when it came to rebounding or bouncing back after losses, right? You saw how the Oklahoma game, they came back after the loss to Florida, in which they were unranked. I think they were 3-2 on the season and found a way to play one of their better games of the year, despite not really having a complete game together. So can you do that again? I do wonder that. I do think this team has a lot of talent. I think they have a leadership group that is very solid. But is this group of leaders right now, Jeff, is it stronger than what they had a year ago, led by Michael Taft on the back end and Anthony Hill? I don't think so.
Yeah, something I want to address. Donald Britt brings us up, and Donald, thank you for the comment. He said, "When we beat Ohio State, there are no contenders left on the schedule. When, not if." I here's the problem with that, Donald. You can't look at it like, okay, are there contending teams left on the schedule? Like everybody in the SEC, this is a league. It is so deep. You can call it the best or whatever. To me, that's all relative. I think it's the deepest league in the country, top to bottom. And last year was a perfect example. CJ, last year, Florida was not a good team, but they were talented enough on a day where they played a really good game. You played probably a D plus C minus game, and you lost that game, and it cost you a playoff spot. So I don't think you can look at it as well a contender or not a contender. That's what separates the Texas from being in the SEC now from when Texas was in the Big 12. If Texas won that big non-conference game, you'd say, okay, got to beat Oklahoma, and then maybe, I don't know, CJ, maybe your tough game the rest of the way. Maybe you go to K-State, or maybe you go to Iowa State, whatever. Like, okay, so you really got it's a 2-game schedule at that point. That's not the case in the SEC, especially with 9 games. It is too deep of a league. There's too many talented teams to expect anybody to just roll through the league or go unbeaten. Texas is going to lose a game in the regular season at some point. I just think if they beat Ohio State, that loss is going to come much later, and you're probably looking at a 1-2 loss team in the regular season. Part of it for me, though, CJ, is like the mental part of it for Texas. Like if you go out at home after the offseason you've had, the promises you made to yourself after last season, how you turned over a new leaf, you got better, you felt you were snubbed out of the playoff. If you come out at home in front of what should be a packed house and you lose to Ohio State again, I think for Sark that kind of sets in because now he's 0 for Ryan Day and throwing Ryan Day and Kirby Smart and whichever DeBoer and whoever else you want to throw into that group. It's a big loss for Arch as a starting quarterback. I just think the toll of that game is that can weigh this team down.
I think so too. And again, at some point you need to get over the hump, right? Whether it's Kalen DeBoer, Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, you need to beat one of these teams. Jeff, if you lose and you turn into what it would then be 0-8 for Steve Sarkisian against those 3 coaches, why would you then have any confidence later in the year that you would then be able to win those games should you see another one of those teams later down the road, right? Why would you think you'd be able to go beat Lane Kiffin and Death Valley? You can beat Texas A&M and Oklahoma. You've done that every single year. But those upper echelon teams, I think Texas needs to get some skin on their wall when it comes to beating an Ohio State, beating a Georgia.
Yeah.
Until then, hey, you can have all the talent in the world, but you're going to come back to discipline and toughness, something that Texas in these 2 games against these teams has certainly squandered in each opportunity so far.
I feel like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth because I did say we did a prediction show a while back, and I did predict Texas to lose to Ohio State. But the more I think about that game is so massive for the trajectory of this program under Sark. I feel like it is as must win of a game as a non-conference game could be because I think that could just set you on a trajectory that can get you to 11-1, get you to 10-2 easy. The flip side, like I said, maybe you go 8-4. So I just there's so much to me riding on that Ohio State game. And to your point, CJ, Rod Babers told me a long time ago, I've taken a lot of football advice from Rod. And one thing is, hey, when you get into big games, ask yourself this. Do you trust the coach and do you trust the quarterback? Right now, based on what we saw at the end of last year and the growth in Arch, I trust Sark and I trust Arch. Depending on how things go on September 12th, my trust could either be more of, I'll trust these guys the rest of the way, or there's going to be some doubt that creeps in.
I'm right there on Arch. And I think, look, I don't think my opinion will change in Arch Manning based off what we see week 1, Jeff. But I will say I'll feel much more confident if he comes out looking like the Arch Manning that we saw in the second half. If we see a sluggish start to the year against Texas State, and I know folks will chop that up to, it's vanilla. You don't want to show too much before Ohio State. If you're Texas and you have this roster offensively, you should be dropping 45, 50 on Texas State.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be doing the exact same thing against UTSA week 3, regardless of what happens against Ohio State. That week 1 game will tell me a lot. It will tell me a lot that, one, Arch Manning is who we believe he will be this year based off of the second half of a year ago. 2, that this Texas team will be able to utilize its versatility, both running the football, getting the ball in space to its playmakers, allowing Arch to sit in the pocket. And, well, the big one here is the offensive line. But more than anything, it'll tell me that, yeah, the talent will live up to what we expect it to be, which is a top of, that upper echelon of teams in the country that can compete against the Ohio States, the Georgias, and then teams that we've seen win national championships recently.
CJ, can I indulge you in an Arch Manning fun fact that'll take 2 seconds?
Please.
So I was doing this because I finished writing that article that I was talking about over on TexasFootball.com today about the offense, how it transitioned once A.J. Millie went back up to the press box. We know there's a lot more that went into that, but I wrote that over today on the site. And I was just doing some number crunching on Arch, and I was like, man, how bad was it? Like, where did Arch rank, through the Kentucky game? He was averaging 207 yards per game, CJ, entering the Mississippi State game. So that's the 7 games through Kentucky. That was 71st nationally and 13th in the SEC among 16 qualifying quarterbacks. He also ranked 91st in FBS and dead last in the SEC in completion percentage. He had a pass efficiency rating of 140.4. That was 63rd nationally and 11th in the SEC. Through 7 games, Arch statistically was a bottom quarter quarterback in the SEC. And you can make the argument, though, that through the last 6 games, CJ, there weren't too many. Trinidad Chambliss, for sure, but other than Chambliss, there weren't too many quarterbacks in the SEC or in the country playing better than Arch those last 6 games.
No, and again, look at who they did that to, right? It's funny when you talk about the 2 tails of Arch, you would have anticipated, when Arch was down, Texas was playing at Georgia, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and that wasn't the case, right? They were playing Kentucky, right? You were playing
UTEP was probably the worst game he had last year.
And that's UTEP, right? So that, again, do you rise with your back against the wall, or can you come out when, I don't want to say there isn't any pressure, but you still take care of business in the way that you need to? I think it's great that Arch and the team was able to finish that way, but you got to start that way. And you dug yourself some holes in a lot of games, Mississippi State being one of them, because you did not play well early on.
Yep, no doubt. All right, we'll keep it going. I'm glad you mentioned the offensive line, CJ, because there's an offensive line point that I want to get to here in just a minute. But right now, let's give a shout out to a couple of our sponsors here on the Tuesday night live stream. First, shout out to our lead sponsor tonight. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Are you stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks of PTO with no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general? If that's the case, then call Andy. He'll take you through a process to help you find a business that'll fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership is something that's not for everyone. But if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. I want to thank Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream here on Texas Football. And we also want to thank Mark Saunders, our long-running sponsor here on the channel of the Recruiting Breakdown. When it comes to protecting all of your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Here's some good news. Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders is the only insurance agent you're going to need. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. If you're looking for someone local to the Austin and Round Rock area, give Mark a call at 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you'll be in good hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. Again, give Mark's office a call at 512-218-8571. That's 512-218-8571. And we want to thank Mark Saunders for sponsoring not just the Recruiting Breakdown here on the channel, but for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream here on Texas Football. All right, CJ, we got our first super chat of the evening. Thank you, Brandon, for the super chat. Much appreciated.
Brandon
said, get in the game, trust in Arch Sark. Put that helmet on, boys. We're going to take it all the way to the bank. Yeah, like I said, I'm a believer in, and thank you, Brandon, so much for the super chat. It's always appreciated. I'm a believer in Arch Manning. Like I said, I referenced those numbers. Just it's the weird contrast of, man, I forgot how bad it was for the first half of the season, and it's only against how good it was in the second half. It's interesting, CJ. We talked about this, and I think, coming up with Arch will be in Tampa next Thursday when Texas is there, and I think you'll probably see some of the same opinion surface. it was funny that we saw Arch's growth and development. I think a lot of the country, a decent chunk of the country, at least, the talking heads on TV and probably the folks that spend too much time on social media wrote him off, just like, oh, he had a bad year. And then they're going back and watching the film, especially around NFL draft time. Hey, Arch's offensive line wasn't great. Texas couldn't run the ball. He's really tough. He hung in there. It's like, we were trying to tell you guys all this for about the last, I don't know, 2 months of the season, like pretty much once you got into the month of November, really from the second half of the Mississippi State game on. So I don't know, CJ, I hope that everybody's realized it's not the last name. It's not just hype. There is substance to what Arch Manning brings to the field.
Yeah, it is all that time in the spring when you sat there and you'd scroll and see another tweet that was like, wait a minute, this kid was actually making some pretty impressive throws. And it was like, all right, someone's watching Texas for the first time, right? Someone's doing anything beyond just box score watching or watching whatever highlights or lowlights there were for a single game. They're sitting there and taking the time to evaluate, one, the offensive line, but two, the drops, right? Two, the play around them was not great. And that should be something that takes a step this year as well. So when it comes to a Cam Coleman or Jermaine Bishop or a healthy Emmett Mosley, or just as simple as a third-year Ryan Wingo, I think you're going to see a much improved Texas offense, which is, again, circulated around Arch Manning.
Arch was the play. Arch is the play. That was pretty much the offense last year. I'm not giving myself credit for it. I just clocked it. Like, look, your offensive identity is Arch Manning. If he's on, you're going to be good. If he's not having a good day, it's not going to go so well. That's that old South Park bit, CJ. If Arch isn't going well, you're going to have a bad time. And that was the case for the Texas offense.
Going to have a bad time
in a few games last year. Brandon, thank you for the super chat. Mike has a super chat. Mike, thank you for the super chat. Said, what can we expect from Texas State in week 1? Never too early to look ahead to the first game of the season. Mike, thank you for the super chat. CJ, it's never too early to look ahead to the opener. To your point about the offense, I feel like I'm setting the bar like 35 points is what I'm looking for from the offense, not for a final score, but like there should be 5 possessions in that game where you're able to move the ball and put it in the end zone. Because Texas State defensively, they're not great. Now, that said, this is a heck of a test for Will Muschamp's defense. And now that we're getting closer to the season, I think everybody's starting to pick up what I've been putting down. Bill Connolly mentioned it at ESPN a few months ago. Texas State, in terms of returning production on offense, they're a top 15 offense in the country in terms of returning production. Brad Jackson may be the best G6 quarterback in the country. Got 2,000-yard receivers returning. G.J. Kinney can coach some offense. Texas State can move the ball. They can score. I just think it's going to be one of those deals, CJ. I don't think defensively they're going to be able to hang with Texas, but they will give Will Muschamp's defense a really, really good look in the opener.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, we've talked about it at times in the past few years, right? When you get that early non-conference test, you typically play really good, and in many cases, a mobile quarterback, right? With Jalen Milroe being one. You sit there and you say, okay, well, what can Texas do from early season tests to kind of take that for the remainder of the year? And I think, well, what can they do for the first 2 weeks? Because Brad Jackson is a guy that can run. He can beat you with his legs. Obviously, the arm is there. I do think he is the best G6 quarterback in the country. But even week 2, when you have to play that sticky coverage, when you have to get pressure and exotic looks to get pressure on a guy that doesn't move, but will beat you with his arm if you don't get pressure home. So you're going to get 2 ends of the spectrum on your first 2 tests. How do you take bits and pieces of that and then package that for the remainder of the year when you have to play a Trinidad Chambliss or a Marcel Reed or a John Mateer or a Sam Levitt, who I went back and watched a little bit of the Mississippi State-Arizona State game earlier today. That kid can evade a lot of pressure. Now, is he best when he's on the run? No, he's not. Yeah. But he can beat you. And Texas saw that in the Peach Bowl 2 years ago. So that's one of those things that when it comes to Texas State, the quarterback is going to be what drives that offense. What does that mean? What am I looking for, Jeff? You got to stay disciplined defensively. That's the big thing for me, and that'll give me a lot of confidence into going into week 2.
That's why I said we did a show a while back on, hey, which quarterback on the schedule worries you the most? To me, it's Brad Jackson, because if you can't handle Brad Jackson, I don't know how you're going to handle Sam Levitt or Trinidad Chambliss or John
Mario
Mateer,
Taylor,
Marcel Reed. Yeah, just go on down the list. Texas is going to play some really, really good quarterbacks this year. And we can talk about NFL potential or whatever, CJ, but like if you look at the way these guys operate their offenses in college, like some really, really good quarterbacks on the schedule. And that's not including, like, I don't know, at the end of spring, it sounded like Faison Brandon was leading the Tennessee quarterback battle. It may be him. It may be McIntyre. I don't know, but you're going to face some really, really good quarterbacks on the schedule. So, Mike, thank you for the question. So that's just a little bit of Texas State primer for you, what to look for in the opener. All right, Cube coming through with the super chat. CJ, I don't know how we appreciate All Right Cube's comments and the super chats as always. Love All Right Cube. I don't know how you're going to take this. So I'm going to just put it out there and I'll stand back. Argus 2025 reminds me of Tony Romo in the early 2010s. Terrible support from the O-line, running game, etc., but magically made the team respectable. CJ, as a fan of the Dallas Football Cowboys in this era, your thoughts, Arch 2025 paralleling Tony Romo in the early 2010s?
Well, look, I don't entirely disagree. You know, there weren't great defenses, the offensive lines. I think, there were good running backs with Tony. You look at DeMarco Murray, right? Felix Jones, I guess, was way earlier, but, there were plenty of talented teams with Tony. But there was always one Achilles heel that prevented Tony and that offense and the Cowboys in its entirety from being anything more than a one and done or missed playoff team. So my thing with that is, look, I do think that you see similarities, Jeff, in the sense that both of those quarterbacks will break their bodies to get what is needed, right? They'll put their bodies on the line for the extra yard. Arch has 2 concussions trying to do exactly that. Romo, we can go down the laundry list of injuries of spleen to hand to ribs to collarbone. I just hope that when Arch gets in the postseason this year, and I'm very much expecting this to be the case, the fault of a game doesn't come down to something as simple as a bobbled field goal snap.
Yep. Thank you for reminding me of that one. That's like the nightmare that I wish didn't reoccur, but it does. So thank you for that. And Matthew, we don't need to go looking for clips for that either. Yes, Marco, poor Tony, if only Des caught it. Des did catch it. They decided that day that it wasn't a catch, but it was a catch. So yeah, I actually want to bring this up, CJ. And I just want everybody to take this journey with me. So Brennan Marion, I think this was an interview with Bruce Feldman in The Athletic, came out and was talking about college. He's former Texas offensive coordinator. Brennan Marion changed his job quite a bit. He's now the Colorado offensive coordinator, and he was talking about Colorado's offensive line. And I'll just read it so everybody watching and listening, obviously if you're listening, you can't see it, but everybody watching, so you don't have to. It says, obviously, being in the Big 12 before when I was at Texas, I know other than Texas Tech, it hasn't drastically changed as far as the players. I said, our O-line is better than what we had at Texas, other than we don't have Kelvin Banks. Offensive line-wise, we're better than we were at Texas. We're bigger. We're more physical. This will be the best offensive line I've ever had. Now, is Brennan Marion probably trying to pump up his guys a little bit? I'm sure he is. Is he completely telling the truth? Nah, there's some nuance to it. But, CJ, it is worth reinforcing about that 2022 offensive line where you had Quinn Ewers as a first-time starting quarterback. But what did you have? You had 2 NFL running backs. You're the best running back, maybe the best player in the country, and Bijan Robinson behind Quinn Ewers. You had Roshan Johnson. So you had 2 NFL running backs. And that offensive line, keep in mind that offensive line was very young. It was I'll call it a physically immature offensive line. You had Kelvin Banks starting as a true freshman, and Cole Hudson starting at guard as a true freshman. You had Christian Jones at right tackle coming off of a pretty forgettable year at left tackle in 2021. You had Hayden Connor was a first-time starter at left guard. Jake Majors was in year 2 as a starting center. And it was a slow burn for that offensive line to get to where they were, to get to where they eventually got to, which is by the end of the 23 season, that was a very respectable offensive line. It was a good offensive line by the end of the 23 season. And there was that Oklahoma incident on the goal line, but we don't have to revisit that. But you think about that 22 line, CJ, you think about the slow burn. That was a young offensive line, but I look at the Texas offensive line this year, and this is the only reason why, to me, this Brennan Marion quote is relevant. It can take an offensive line a little bit of time to get used to playing together. Now, you do have veterans on this line. Connor Robertson's played a lot of football. Goosby's played a lot of football. Brandon Baker at this point has a full year starting under his belt. Siani's got a full year starting under his belt from Wake Forest. Lawrence Seymour's experience. They haven't done it together, CJ, but I like the fact that this Texas offensive line, even if we understand that it does take some time, I do take some comfort in the fact that it's an older group, so maybe that learning curve isn't going to be as steep.
That's what I hope, right? That's what I hope, is that it's not a 7-week work in progress to get you where you need to be, right? Because if not, you will lose week 2. And Texas saw that a year ago. And you once again were on the goal line and couldn't punch it in a game in which one score would have been very important for you. But I do look at this Colorado offensive line, and I can't help but be intrigued, to come out and say this is a better offensive line than a team that was a finalist for the Joe Moore Award. All right, let's see what you got. Well, Bo Hewley comes in from Georgia. Demetrius Hunter, nickname was Pancake, coming out of high school out of the Houston area, originally committed to Oklahoma, ended up at Houston, is now at Colorado. All right, let's see what you got. And then at right guard, Javon McFadden, he was just at Ohio State for a few years. So there is talent there. But, Jeff, do we expect that unit to be Joe Moore Award? Or here's even the better question. Do we expect that unit to even watch film on a day-to-day? Because the quarterback wasn't a year ago.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of Colorado. It just is. I guess people can draw their own conclusions. I'm just kind of ready for Colorado to go away and be done with it. Like every year, the talking heads are going to do this with Colorado and pump up Colorado, and it's going to fall flat on its face like it usually does. But yeah, I just think it to an extent is Brennan Marion right. I guess technically, if you really look at it, yes. But you look at what that offensive line became by the time those guys were done. CJ, I would say it's a stretch, a massive stretch at best to think Colorado's at that point.
Yeah, no, I agree. But the one point that I will say, the one kind of nod of the cap that I will give to Brennan Marion here is throughout the Sark tenure, when you talk about physicality, I don't know how many of these offensive lines I can point to and say, okay, that's in the top 2 to 3 most accurate describing adjectives that I can use to describe the body of work that I've seen for a given offensive line under Sark. So if there is, kind of hey, maybe he was right, physicality might be it, right? We'll have to see how they work together.
Yeah.
But that's something that even going into this year, I'm like, yeah, I feel good about Trevor Goosby. I think I like what I know about Melvin Siani at right tackle. But what about that physicality? Can you go move other people for a full yard when you absolutely desperately need it? Texas has always struggled with that.
Can we say this, CJ? If you look back, like I felt like that offensive line, like the offensive line arc of that group Marion's talking about under Sark, I felt like by the end of the 23 season, that was the most consistently physical offensive line play we've seen from a Steve Sarkisian offensive line in Texas. Like because even with Jonathan Brooks out, you were still able to run the football and you could run it effectively. And quite frankly, had Sark ran up more against Washington, maybe Texas gets a crack at Michigan. I don't know. But I felt like that was a level where you felt like, okay, if they want to, if they need to, if they have to line up and run the football, you felt like they could do it. But you didn't get that in 24. Like it was way too – that's why I struggle to say, okay, was Texas physical? Yes, but not consistently. Like it was way too feast or famine. Like you'd have the 280 or whatever it was against A&M and you run for 3 bills or whatever it was against Clemson, and then you can't bust a grape against Arizona State and Ohio State. Like it just I'll settle for like a nice like 190 instead of giving me like 300 and then 50. Like just give me a baseline. The baseline with 23 was much better than it was in 24. And then last year, like, let's not kid ourselves. Like we knew when they lined up and tried to run the football against UTEP and really couldn't, like at that point, it really set in like, okay, this thing's got there's some work to be done here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. A solid baseline for the running game and that offensive line in general it just does so much for play action, right? It just does so much for what Sark wants to do with the RPOs and the way in which Arch can manipulate defenses with, the play action fakes and stuff. So a solid baseline, I think, is just all you can ask for this year. Don't give me the highs and lows, the peaks, the valleys. Solid baseline. That's it.
So we can keep talking about that if you want. We can move on to something else. Get your questions lined up. Super Chats, as always, jump to the front of the line right now. Need to thank a couple more sponsors here on the Tuesday night live stream. And first and foremost, I want to take this opportunity to let everybody know that this edition of All in Texas Football is brought to you by Prize Picks. There's a lot of ways you can watch sports. You can sit back, check the score, maybe flip between games, or you can have something riding on every swing, shot, touch, or possession. That is where Prize Picks comes in. Summer sports calendar is loaded right now between baseball, the WNBA, the World Cup. Prize Picks gives you a way to make it all the more interesting no matter what you're watching. You're just looking at player projections and deciding one thing, more or less. That's it. Build your lineup, submit your picks. Now you're locked in from the first whistle to the final out. Today, a couple of WNBA plays. Maria Condi, less than 9.5 points, and Shakira Austin, more than 8.5 rebounds. It's a couple of WNBA plays today. That's what makes Prize Picks fun. Trust your read, make the call, and suddenly every little moment matters. Prize Picks is available in all 50 states, including right here in the great state of Texas. So if you haven't done it yet, make sure you download the Prize Picks app. Use the code HMA when you do. Play $5 and you'll get $50 in lineups instantly. Again, the code is HMA5. Get you 50. It's that simple with the Prize Picks app. And as always, please remember to play smart, play responsibly, play Prize Picks, and shout out Zen AI for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream here at All in Texas Football this summer. Don't just watch the game, vibecast it. Zen AI is the home of vibecasting. It's a new way to capture and share real sports conversations. No studio, no fancy gear, because your phone is the whole setup. Arguing about who should have taken the last shot, breaking down every play. Just hit record, talk it out, and then Zen AI is going to take that conversation and turn it into a sportscast that you can share as clips, reels, or TikToks. An AI producer is going to work behind the scenes, cleaning up the audio, cutting the highlights, helping you tweak edits just by chatting in plain English. Go live while the game is on, or you can record your hot takes afterwards. Bring your own co-host or find another fan in Zen AI's network. This summer, Zen AI is paying new Vibecasters to launch their first sportscast. Humans are the talent. AI is the infrastructure. Zen AI is invite only. Head to zen.ai to join the waitlist. That's zen.ai, or tap the link in our show notes. And again, thank you to Zen AI for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. Brandon, I don't know what we do without you. Brandon's got a couple super chats. Said he's in. Don't leave him hanging out here alone. Brandon, why don't you get your questions in? Said he's gotten his in with 2 super chats. So, Brandon, thank you so much for your support here.
Thank you, Brandon.
Much appreciated. All right, Cube. Well, all right, Cube already had the super chat. My bad. Thought that was a new super chat, but that's the second one, so my bad. All right, Cube, you don't get it read twice. I don't need to think of any more Tony Romo mishaps in that his tenure with the Cowboys. So we will move on from that. So CJ, the offensive line, we were talking about it like last year. You okay? Well, as I say that, Brandon has another super chat. Brandon said, "Okay, Jeff, Rod has a helmet once I reach 50. What is your thing for 50? Where's your own thing? Is it a helmet or what is it? What about you, CJ? CJ, I don't have a helmet or anything. I'm working on getting something, but I don't have anything for the big super chats.
I don't either. Not yet. I mean, I thought I'd get up here and start dancing. Folks didn't like that, so we'll scrap that idea, Brandon. But no, when the season comes, I'm sure I will get something. I need to have something because obviously you and plenty of others have been very generous. But I got to find something, Jeff. We got to. I'm not bringing back confetti. I used to have like the little confetti poppers. I was like, oh, woohoo, commit, yay, big super chat. And then I realized like this sucks. I'm just cleaning up my room way more than I need to. So we're not bringing those back.
So you smell that powder once it pops. It's not.
Oh,
It smells like you got charred mess in your room. No, Marco Viking helmet. I've thought about sombrero. Do I go sombrero? Do I go lucha libre mask? So I don't know. I'm open to suggestions. Is what I'm saying on all this. So if you guys have suggestions, please bring them forward, and I'll do my best to abide. All right, let's go ahead and get some questions, CJ. All right, Cube says, CJ, have you met Paul Feinbaum? And does he call you a young whippersnapper? Have you had any interactions with Feinbaum?
I did a show one time. Haven't met him in person. Have walked by him, Jeff, and every time that I've just seen him in person, he just reminds me of John Clayton in the sense that he's probably about 5'7", 140 pounds, and you're like, man, the takes come from that guy. That's who we're talking about. But no, I don't know. He was great when he had me on, and I tried to make a joke, didn't land, but that's all right.
So there you have it. All right, Cube, thank you for the question. Daniel with a question said, how would y'all rank the projected starting linemen as pass blockers versus run blockers on this year's team? CJ, that's a good question. Here's my thing with the offensive line. This is what I was going to say a second ago. And I've said this a couple of times, but it's worth reinforcing. I would feel much better, or maybe I feel worse. It's just the unknown. It's the unknown that we don't have a sample of what Lawrence Seymour looks like in a Texas uniform. Like, if we gotten something in the spring, at least I'd be closer to making a preseason judgment on this group as far as expectations go. But the Seymour factor is one that, as a group, it's the unknown, man. I just don't know.
I feel much better about this group as a pass protecting unit than a run blocking unit.
Right now, yes.
I don't know if that's a surprise to many. I think Melvin Siani has a great pressure rate from a year ago. Obviously, Trevor Goosby's really good. Brandon Baker spinning inside while having right tackle experience, I think, is a bonus. So what does that mean? That means, well, you should have cleaner pockets for Arch and less pressure. I think we'd all agree that's great. But when it comes to what that unit might look like, when it comes to, again, that one physical yard, Jeff, I don't know. And I think a lot of that depends on what you get from Connor Robertson and what you get from Lawrence Seymour.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to this question by Marco Mendez. Marco, thank you for the question, because this is a fair question. Marco says, is the lack of physicality more on Sark, Flood, or Becton? I don't think it's on Becton, because defensively you've been physical. So I don't think it's on Becton. I don't think it's a strength conditioning issue. And I don't know that it's a Kyle Flood issue, because if we're talking about schematics, to me, that all falls back on Sark. And that, to me, CJ, is where it goes. I mean, it's on Sark to get this run game figured out. The run game, you can make the argument it's regressed every year he's been at Texas. Now, like the regression from 21 to 22, like, okay, was that really a regression? And then from 22 to 23, he probably took a step back, but was it that significant of a step back? But definitely going from 23 to 24, it took a step back, and then it fell off a cliff last year. I do think it probably, if you're on a percentage scale, maybe, I don't know, Torrey Becton and Kyle Flood together, to me, make up maybe 10% of it. But I think the other 90, CJ, it's on Sark. Like, you as a play caller, this is your offense. This is your baby. You've got to find a way to establish a physical mindset of, this is our identity. This is who we are. This is not who we want to be. This is who we're going to be. And there is some balance in there. Like, you don't want to go like Tom Herman meathead football and just slam your head against the wall. But at the same time, like, you've got to establish, okay, if we're going to be a physical football team, the thing I've noticed, CJ, with physical football teams, they don't have to tell you and remind you that they're physical. You just know it.
Yeah, I think one of those boxes is getting off the bus looking impressive physically, right? That's all great, but if you don't utilize that, if you aren't a guy that kind of exudes strength when you get on the field, and that intimidation wears off by the time that opening kickoff comes, then what's the point, right? And the big thing for me is, you look at every single Texas team. Again, I mentioned physicality, probably not a big descriptor when it comes to the offensive line. I could say that about the defensive line. When you've had guys like Moro Ojimo, Keandre Coburn, Alfred Collins, Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, Vernon Broughton, I could easily say that about those guys. Shoot, even like Bill Norton, Jermaine Lole, like Texas had big time plays because those guys wouldn't give up one single yard.
Yeah.
The big thing again, when it's been a consistent theme, regardless of who is on the offensive line, how many years they've been there, what level prospect star rating they had coming in, if that continues to be an issue, then yeah, I think it falls on Steve Sarkisian. And I think there is some on Kyle Flood. But Torrey Becton, to me, I've seen it at every other position where you're breaking combine records for speed. You're wowing in the speed department. You're putting up big-time bench numbers at the NFL Combine. And then I look at the defensive line and I say, hey, I've never had to question whether or not this is a unit that takes its strength and conditioning serious. I don't look at him as the issue.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it's a Torrey Becton issue. I think, I guess if you want to assign blame, maybe, okay, let's, if you want to blame, if somebody wants to blame Torrey Becton, maybe we'll go like 1% Torrey Becton, 9% Kyle Flood, 9 to 50, 9 to 14% Kyle Flood. And then to me, 85, 90% of this is Sark. And Jason Blinsky, Jason, thank you for the super chat. Jason says, why do you think the O-line has been such a blind spot for Sark? Seems to be really willing to spend on most other spots, but not the O-line. Can really derail the season. I'll say this. I don't know that it's been a blind spot, Jason, in terms of talent. CJ, I feel like from a personnel standpoint, for the most part, if you look at most of Sark's tenure, they've been pretty good, I think. Last year was the exception, and I just think they trusted their in-house development way too much and left way too much to chance not going into the portal. Now, they'll spend like retaining Trevor Goosby, keeping Trevor Goosby from going to the league wasn't cheap. Melvin Siani wasn't cheap. Brandon Baker, not cheap. So I think they're spinning on the O-line. My problem, and I would answer Jason's question this way, CJ, and I'll pose it to you like this. My thing has been, I don't feel, well, I think there's two things. One, I think Sark and Kyle Flood, to an extent, got way too wrapped up in the big humans philosophy. We talked about that right around draft time with DJ Campbell. I just think they got way too caught up in that, and it hurt them a little bit. But I think, too, it goes back to scheme. I don't know that Sark at times has done as good a job as he probably could have of mirroring his best run game schemes with what his personnel does really well. There's been times where they've had it, but, CJ, the fact that some games, you look at 24 season especially, when they didn't have a counterpunch, like if you took away the outside zone, you could beat Texas. Like you shut down their run game. Like the fact that you haven't had a counterpunch, I just feel like some of your pieces are way too good for you to not have multiple ways you can get after people.
Yeah, I think the question's good. Why has there been such a blind spot? Look, I think you've been fantastic in the tackle department, right? You go from Kelvin Banks to Trevor Goosby. It doesn't get much better than that across the entire country, right? Say what you want about Cam Williams and the way that things ended, but look, he was a day 2 draft pick before a knee injury kind of stumbled him down draft boards. I think the tackle position has been fine. I think it will be fine with Melvin Siani again this year and next year should Brandon Baker bounce back out. I think that you feel good about a third-year guy. So the question to me, and I think, Jeff, this again kind of goes back to that physicality conversation, and you could probably tie it into the big humans, is did you just think that being big was what you needed to move people? Because the guards and center, I mean, they've been good. They've been good. I wouldn't say they've been great. I wouldn't say that they've been elite. I wouldn't say that that group has been enough when you look at a Miami, when you look at an Indiana, a Notre Dame from this past year.
Yeah.
I don't think that trio of your guard, center, guard combo at any point was as good as what those three teams put out on the field last year. And if you want to win in the SEC, you need those three guys to have a physical, dominate the man ahead of you type of mindset before anything else. And I don't know if you had that from a personnel department or if you even had that from kind of a coaching, institutionalized kind of department. So something has to change for that group to get much more physical this year.
That is very fair. I think Yeah, that interior, and basically what we're talking about, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, CJ, so you tell me if I'm on the right track with this. There's a difference. Like, you can look at the personnel they've had on the interior offensive line. Caden Connor, I think, was a 6th-round draft pick. Jake Majors stuck on an NFL practice squad for a whole season. DJ Campbell got drafted. But at the end of the day, like, there's a difference between having NFL guys on the offensive line and having premium talent at those positions. Just because guard and center aren't premium positions doesn't mean you can't have premium talent. And where it shows up is if you face a team that's really talented between the tackles on the interior defensive line, like Georgia has been, like Ohio State has been, that's where that mismatch, that's where you get exposed a little bit. And if you're, but then you say that, and now I'm thinking, okay, if you're Sark, can you work around that? You can only work around so much if from B gap to B gap, you're just losing the battle at the point of attack consistently. Like, as a play caller, you got to feel at some point like you're a little hamstrung. So I think it all works together, CJ. I think it works together that your personnel has been good, but good hasn't been good enough. And I think Sark has to get better at marrying the run game schemes with the personnel.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'll sacrifice having a, quote, big human for a guy that can move, especially with how often we've seen this offense and Sark and Flood. And these guys really rely on outside zone, right? Because you look at it a year ago, especially through the first half, you'd go back and back and back and back to outside zone with guys that just simply couldn't get out of their stance quick enough.
Yeah.
And I go back to that Arizona State game, Jeff. I think that average defensive lineman was around 298 pounds or 295 pounds. You're sitting there saying, well, Texas is averaging around 325, 330. They shouldn't maul these guys. They were just flat out quicker off the snap.
Mm-hmm.
They beat you to a spot. They beat you to a landmark. And now all of a sudden you're sitting there saying, well, if I got my hands on them, I would drive them backward, but I can't get my hands on them because I'm so damn slow. So that's where you have to marry them.
And one problem that I've had with some, and I like, when I watch Sark call a game or watch a Sark offense, I like about 85% of the stuff that I'm watching. Like, I haven't had too many just outright complaints about Sark. But one of my legitimate gripes, CJ, to your point, I don't think at guard they've been athletic enough to do some of the stuff that they ask their interior linemen to do. Like, that's kind of stuff you just talked about, and that's kind of what I'm talking about with marrying your schemes with your personnel. To your point, there are pass plays where they pull their guards a lot in pass protection. Yeah. But if your guard isn't quick-footed and can't get out there, then you're leaving your quarterback to be a sitting duck. Right. There's a lot of times in short yardage runs where they pull their guards, which I hate, because what's the one thing that'll screw up when you're pulling a guard and trying to replace him? Penetration. And if it's third and short, fourth and short, the defense is pinning their ears back and getting after it. So you're almost inviting penetration at that point, to me, when you pull guards. That's just something. I'm not saying that's a flaw in Sark's offense. That's just something that I just personally would rather see them do away with as much as they do it, just pulling guard. But that's another reason why I'm excited about moving Brandon Baker inside, where now can he take that athleticism? He seems to have really taken to that move. Can he take that athleticism, and now can that play to where when you ask him to do those things that you want guards to do, he's going to be capable of doing them?
Yeah. And look, I know I sat here and said, hey, I don't know about the big human philosophy. Lawrence Seymour's not big. He's wide. Mm-hmm. But you're not a second-team Phil Sill All-American, Jeff, if you can't move. And I think that was the thing that you go watch his tape at Western Kentucky. You say, okay, 6'2", 320 pounds, but that first step is quick. He gets to the second level quick. Melvin Siani, in space, I think he's a great athlete for his size. So I do think that this unit from a personnel scheme should be better in the run game, but sometimes you just need it up top. Sometimes you just need I listened to Jackson Cook, and he goes, the commit in the 2027 class, and he said, I like playing offensive line because I get to put somebody else on their back. Jeff, I don't know how many Texas offensive linemen over the last 5 years where I said, hey, what's your favorite part about playing offensive line? I don't know how many of them would have said that. Over
the last 20, like you, we can be real about this.
Fair.
And man, that is why that position is. I remember talking to high school coaches about this that had guys that went to Texas, and then where they would be concerned about their guys, it wasn't like that their guy was not physically talented to play at that level. And some of those guys turned out to be physically good enough to play at that level. It's the fact that some of the really good high school offensive linemen, for their whole life, they've been the big kid and they've towered over everybody. And, growing up, you've had to tell them, okay, kind of take it easy on the little kids. Don't be so rough. And now all of a sudden you're telling them, okay, now he's just got to flip that switch and be the meanest dude on the field. Some guys can do it, but there's a lot of kids that can't, and it takes some time. And some guys just never get to that point. So that's one thing to consider. And again, for other high school offensive linemen, it's you've been the biggest, most dominant guy your whole high school career. Now you're stepping on the field, in some cases with guys that are 3 or 4 years older than you, like grown men on a college football field, and they're just as big, just as athletic, just as strong as you, and they've got some years. Like it can be hard to wrap your mind around. That's why that position is so tough to evaluate and get your arms wrapped around. We'll get back to it here in just a second, but want to thank one last time our lead sponsor for the Tuesday night live stream here at On Texas Football, and give a shout out to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Do you want control over your own destiny? If you do, maybe franchise ownership is right for you. If you think that's the case, call Andy Ludicky. He's an expert at placing people in the right franchise that fit your strengths and your finances. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And a shout out to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Tuesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. All right, CJ, we got some supers to get to. Jason has a follow-up super. Jason, thank you for the super chat. Said, maybe I asked wrong. Since the monster class, which would be the class of 2022, that's the Kelvin Banks, DJ Campbell class, we have not invested in a bunch of 5 stars up front, one here and one there, but we have counted on development. Jason, okay, I see what you're saying. Some of that is not for lack of trying. Like, they went after Michael Fasusi. They've been after some of these guys. It's just when you see that logjam, sometimes for a 5-star guys like that, like Michael Fasusi, if Michael Fasusi had a clear path to playing time, then he might be at Texas right now. But the path to the field at Oklahoma was much clearer. So I think that's part of it. So you've tried to get some of those guys. I do think, CJ, we're seeing Texas go back to that in this 2027 class. You go get a Brian Swanson, who's that caliber guy. You go get Ishmael Kamara, who's that type of guy, just in terms of where they rank as prospects. And you compare them with the Jackson Cook, Keon Hemphill Woods, and a Lucas Rose. So you feel like you've got a nice mix. Jason, where I will agree with you is I just felt like it again. I hate to sound like a broken record, but going into the 25 season, knowing that you had a lot to replace up front from 24, they should have gone to the portal. Like, they should not have just put so much into, okay, we trust our in-house development, just left way too much to chance. And CJ, the reason why that's so disappointing is that's one of the very few things from a roster standpoint in the portal era that Sark has left a chance. Like, they've done a really good job at, okay, hey, if we had any concern that this may be a question mark, let's go take an extra body, or let's make sure we're good here, or let's take an extra high school guy, whatever it is. They just didn't do that with offensive line. Like, it's just, I don't know if it was just leaning too much on development or what it was, but to Jason's point, like, that's the one thing, the one time they really neglected it, and it's the one time they really didn't need to.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'll even go back. I feel like outside of that 2023 class, which really didn't do a whole lot for Texas, you sit there and you can point to at least one guy panning into a future first-round pick, right? Trevor Gooseby, I guess, is one of those. But additionally, you look at John Turntine, Brandon Baker, now an Ishmael Kamara, Brian Swanson. There's been a 5-star level guy in each one of these classes.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's the rest of the class that you look at and you say, okay, they need to be able to develop. But yeah, Jeff, I'm with you. At first, I think there was a reluctancy to use the portal at all. It's just, hey, we don't want to become that team that is just basically a bunch of mercenaries that comes in for 1 year and is gone. Now we have to do this all again. We have to turn basically a blind eye or turn our back on high school recruiting and relationships with the coaches and the development and the trainers and these guys coming up and being who we want to recruit and develop all the way around. But Sometimes you just need it. Sometimes it's very easy to look into your spring season and just say, dude, we've got to get some help.
Yeah.
We can't leave this up to chance anymore.
No doubt. I think the other thing too, CJ and Jason, I hope we answered the question correctly. If not, please let us know in the chat. But the other thing, and we talked about this too, you can recruit 5-star guys, but if you've got a Kelvin Banks that's a no doubt walk-in starter, that's great. That's money wisely spent. If not, you're going to have to understand, and your player's going to have to understand, you could have a significant amount of effectively dead money on the sideline. Like that's money that's not going to be on the field helping you win games while it's developing. That's kind of the catch-22, I think, with recruiting 5-star offensive linemen is, hey, yeah, you're hoping you get a Kelvin Banks. Those guys are few and far between. Like a legitimate high school offensive tackle who's like a legit 3 and done to the NFL guy as a first-round pick, those guys are very few and far between when you really look at it and break it down. So if you're CJ, that's my thing. If you're cool with a high 4 or 5-star guy not being on the field and that money's on the sideline for a year, maybe 2, if you're cool with that, then do it. If not, then you gotta come up with a new strategy.
Yep. And that's the name of the game. Can your investments pay off immediately? Is that ROI is something that you get immediate feedback for? Right now, I think Texas has realized we need our money to be on the field.
Yeah, no doubt. So Jason, thank you for the super chat. Devon Osley with the super chat. Thank you so much, Devon, for the super chat. Said Jeff and CJ, a great end to the day with you two. Much appreciated. With a 26 national championship, lower expectations for 27. I don't know that there's 2 ways you can look at this, CJ. Number one, I don't know that it would matter. If you get a national championship, then, whatever happens after that happens. But I do think the expectations are going to be, to me, looking ahead, they're going to be lower for 27 because look at your roster. Look how much potential NFL talent you've got on this roster in the 27 draft. Like this is your window, like where Ohio State was in 2024, where people are like, hey, it's now or never for Ryan Day. That's kind of where Sark is right now with his Texas roster.
Yeah, I don't want to look ahead to 27, but I can't imagine my expectations being anything close to what I expect this year. No. There's no way. You're not going to have a Colin Simmons. You'll have no Jelani McDonald. You'll have no Cam Cullen. You'll have no Ryan Wingo. You'll have no Arch Manning. You'll have no Trevor Gooseby, and that's just a start, right? Add Bo Masco, Rasheem Biles. I could go on and on. The running backs. What Texas looks like this year versus next year, I don't know. Jeff, I mean, it's going to be completely different.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what the 27. Daniel says lose every game at 27 if I'm guaranteed a title in 26. I wouldn't go that far, Daniel, but yeah, the point stands, like if you win a national title, to me, it doesn't really matter. And I don't mean to dismiss the question, but yeah, my expectations are already lower for 27. If that makes any sense. Like this is, and the great thing about the portal, CJ, is your window with a particular team might not be open as long, but you're going to be able to open the window way more often than you would have under the previous setup that we had, because you have access to talent, and with the portal and your resources, you can go get them. So Devon, thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated, but that's kind of our take on that. Justin Yarborough with the super chat said that 23 Brooks run game was a chef's kiss. I think this year will be closer to that than the past 2 seasons. I blame running back injuries as much as bring back duo and Sandman. There will be no Quinn slander. Mm-hmm. Anytime you guys want to say anything negative to Sandman, go ahead, have free reign at it. CJ, I heard Bobby Jerry talking about this. Actually, this might have been Jerry talking about it on the live stream a couple nights ago with Rod. But in college football, more so than the NFL, an injury to a premium running back will impact you way more in college football than it will in the NFL, just because of the way that position is handled at that level. Very few teams are building their offense around a running back. You may have your offense built around a running back in college. So I won't put it all on running back injuries the last couple of years, but it hadn't helped.
No, it certainly has not. And yeah, more times than not in the NFL, you can go find I don't mean this to be a shot, but you can go find someone like a Deontay Foreman off of waivers or free agency and then step in and be a 150-yard back for you if things go well up front, right? So You can't do that in college. And the difference between having an elite game-changing back like a Bijan Robinson or just kind of a middle-of-the-road running back in the SEC or even the Big 12 obviously is night and day. So I'm with you. It's funny enough, I actually watched a little bit of the Texas-Ohio State 2025 all 22 this morning. You know, the first run of the season for C.J. Baxter last year went for 14 yards.
Yeah.
And that was the second longest rush that he had the entire season. His first rush of the year.
Wow.
His first rush of the year was the second longest rush attempt that he had the entire season. It was on a guard tight end power, pulled both of them. They kicked out perfectly fine, got to the second level, 14 yards. I sat there and said, man, one, we didn't see that concept too often. Two, I didn't see CJ Baxter really do that at all in 2025. So we'll see.
No, and you know what? Like, I know I just kind of picked apart some of Sark's stuff. Like, you go back, Sark's opening script for the Ohio State game was actually really good.
Yeah.
It's just Arch missed a couple of passes and he executed a couple of runs. But that opening script, like Sark was on point with the script. Just never really got it on track that day. Got a couple more super chats to close us out tonight. Tyler coming through with the super chat said, do you think we get a 50 burger against Texas State week 1? What's y'all's early score prediction? If it ain't burnt, it ain't turnt. There's got to be there were many years ago, many moons ago, CJ, those two dogs I had have since passed. I had 2 labs, but my wife and I used to like to get them costumes. Like, you go to PetSmart and you see the dog costumes. One year, one of them was a hamburger. So I was like, hey, if you could get like that foam burger thing and put a hat on for like the recap show, the post game, whenever Texas does get a 50 burger, I would be down for that. I would do that. So that's among the ideas I'm going to file away. I'm just going to put that off to the side, put it in the suggestion box. I haven't seen a line for that game, CJ, but I would think something in like the 48-17-ish type area, 44-14 or something like that.
Yeah, I think the number that I had just kind of come to terms with in my own head was 45-14. So a 30-ish point victory in the mid-40s I think would be great. I would love a 50 burger, Jeff. I would really love a 50 burger. So Vegas agrees with me 100%. 31 points, that's 45-14.
Yeah.
Man, oh man, if only I could beat that damn city one time.
There's a reason why they keep building new buildings and new facilities out there, CJ.
Glass skyscrapers looking like $1 million pieces of art in the middle of a desert, Jeff. How do they do it?
You know what? I'll say 45-14 because if it's 45, that means Gio Spedic got you a field goal, which would be nice. It would be nice to see one go through the uprights in the opener. So I'll say for lack of imagination, Tyler, I'll say 45-14. Thank you, Tyler, for the super chat. Mike with the super chat. Boy, this is a heck of a one to end on. Thoughts on Tom Herman landing a job at Florida State, CJ?
First and foremost, let me congratulate my dear friend, Mr. Matthew Hutchison, behind the screen. Have fun.
Got your hydration charts ready to go around Mike Norvell's building?
Dude, I mean,
I
don't know what to think, Jeff.
We've all had if you're in this business long enough, you have good takes and you have some bad takes. You don't win them all. And then you've got takes that you're just like, man, I cannot believe I was that just horrifically wrong about something. Tom Herman's coaching career arc is something I got that one so freaking wrong. If you'd have told me 10 years ago, think about going into the 2016 season. So U of H is coming off of that Peach Bowl season where they finished in the top 10 and everybody's excited, like Tom Herman's the toast of the town. Going to that 16 season where they beat OU at NRG in the opener. If you said, hey, 10 years from now, Tom Herman will be hired and fired at Texas, hired and fired at Florida Atlantic, and will be getting a job as an assistant coach for a Florida State program where the head coach is dead man walking. Dude, I would have said, there's no way, like, you're on something. Like, give me some of that, because there's no way it's going to end like that for Tom Herman. But unfortunately, CJ, it did. And
It did.
Unfortunately, it was his own doing, which we don't have enough time left in this show or the broadcast week to get into that. But man, it's just I could not believe how wrong I was about Tom Herman at Texas and what he would do.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate too because this celebration just goes so hard. But yeah, no, I mean, Alex, we'll see how it goes in Tallahassee this year.
What is he doing? First off, which I still don't know. Second off, I don't know that I want him. I mean, I guess if you're Mike Norvell, like, what do you have to lose? Like, Herb Hand's on that staff, so I guess that's the kind of assistant to the head coach. Yeah, I don't know if he's legitimately like angling to be the interim guy with a chance to get the job whenever Norvell gets fired. But man, yeah, just I don't have too many thoughts on it, really. Mike, to answer the super chat question, I just not the way I thought Tom Herman's career would go. I don't know. This doesn't change anything really for Tom Herman's trajectory or for Mike Norvell's tenure at Florida State. I hate to say it, CJ. It really feels like you're the guy playing the violin on the Titanic. Like,
yeah, I mean, we all know what's about to happen after this year. So I'd probably have spent if I was on a sinking ship, Jeff, going to Tallahassee is probably like what? Like Meade?
That's like the thing is, like, does Tom Herman even need to coach? Like, he's probably got enough money. Like, I don't like he didn't need to coach. Oh, I mentioned also his tenure, like that whole thing with the Bears that didn't work out too because Matt Nagy got fired.
Find a sinking ship.
I guess, man. I mean, the good news is if Mike Norvell does get fired, you can't blame it on Tom Herman because he's only going to be there for a short amount of time. So, but the die does feel cast on that one. All right, that's going to do it for the Tuesday night live stream. CJ, thank you for the time and the knowledge and the intel and the expertise. As always, huge thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, given the state of the Florida State football program. Keep him in your thoughts and prayers. But Matthew is the MVP here at On Texas Football, doing everything he does. Huge thank you to our sponsors tonight. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Shout out to Mark Saunders. We got Prize Picks and Zen AI for sponsoring the live stream. Hey, if you're not a member over at OnTexasFootball.com, make sure you get over the site, check out everything we've got going on over there. Make sure you like this video, hit that like button before we're done. Make sure you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel, and make sure you got your notifications set. That way, anytime we drop a new video or we go live, you're not going to miss any of our Longhorn coverage or breaking news. Thank you, everybody, so much for the question. Chat was live tonight. Thank you for the questions, the comments, super chats. Much appreciated as always. Great participation from the chat tonight. If you had something that we didn't get to, we apologize, but you can direct it to the guys bright and early at Coffee and Football tomorrow. That'll be Jerry, Bobby, and Blake doing their thing bright and early. CJ and I will be back tomorrow night for the Wednesday night live stream with lifetime Longhorn Marcus Myers. So until then, for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, and yes, thank you, Cisco. # for Craig. I am Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time,
have fun, Matthew.